Hello everyone, I'm Jaha Zainabu and this is Storytime with Jaha Zainabu day 40/365. Today I'm reading from a collection called Squatters. Now, Squatters is just something I wrote to free myself. So I talk about that all the time on Storytimes. Like, the stories that live inside of you that need to come out, gotta come out. And Squatters is, you ever have a relationship with somebody? It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, but it could be. And long after the breakup, they still live in your head in not a good way. Like ways that maybe they used to criticize you. That criticism, the voice, like that criticism still shows up when you do that thing that they would criticize you about, or maybe a particular abuse might replay itself over and over. That has happened to me, and with 3 particular people, and the relationships are so old and done with. But from time to time, and it is not an everyday thing, but sometimes from time to time, like you hear like that, or that particular abuse will replay, or that so that's what Squatters is about. In this case, it is 3 romantic relationships. And Squatters is a collection of personal stories broken up into 3 parts. This nigga, that nigga, and the other one. So I'm gonna jump in. Squatters. You live in my head, all of you, taking turns, front seating my life, still, now, stealing joy, stealing silence, years, stealing me, making a mess of my mind, greeting me in the morning, on my couch when I get home, always at the table when I cook, in my bed when I sex, in my day when I work, criticizing, taunting. You were lawless, I was ungoverned. I swallowed your abuse to survive. And here I am, still, now. You are invisible to others, but technicolor to me, all of you still, now. All this time gone by, your voice through my speakers, my mind, my memory, still, now, even today, guiding my paintbrush, my pen, my piece, an unwanted guest in my life, my stories, my body, my cells, my blood. I see you everywhere I turn, thousands of miles away, and there you are, dictating my day, interrupting my night. This is your notice to quit. No option to pay. Don't find me. Don't darken the threshold of my mind. Part 1. This nigga. 1. We were in the room, in the apartment on Ocean. You sat on the bed. I stood in front of you, leaning against the dresser. Your voice got louder, your frown deepened, then your fist slammed through the wall, our wall, a hole that could have been my head, to scare me, control me, to have me see you large. But you were never large. You were a petulant teenager at best, barely in a man's body who could not control his emotions or repair a hole in the wall. I was no better. Days passed, and when I could no longer tolerate the visual dysfunction, I bought a red, black, and green flag, nailed it portrait over the wreckage, a cloth meant to represent freedom for our people while I was encaged. I bought a plant stand to place underneath, set a ficus on top. I prettied up your mess for us. For us. Remember that day when you sat on the floor, caught in drama, some more, and you said that you lied? For us. For us. But we didn't end back then when you left and went home to your parents. I still hear your voice. Absent any good training, I still feel your arms squeezing me tightly in bed, your hot, breathy warning that if you could not have me, then no one ever would, too. I was just waking up from my nap, hungry and angry. No food in our home, and a grown and able body by my side, who refused to work for the man because of his pride. We had enough money between us for 2 small boxes of candy. You ate yours on the walk home. I saved mine for later. I pushed covers off of my head to eat the Mike and Ike's, only to find you grinning and my empty box by the bed. 3. You were the revolutionary, the king, the god, the head, or whatever Clarence 13X said. Your ego, your tantrums, that woman in my bed. 4. I begged you to walk me outside because I was afraid of the man by my car, but you were too sleepy, too mean to go with me that far. We were young, but never in love. Love does not dishonor. Love does not huff and puff. Love does not put drugs in my food to loosen me up. Love does not square up on me, threaten to cuss me out good if I didn't respect you or do as I should. You are not a leader. I couldn't call you a man. The night shifts I worked, the late buses I took, the lonely walk home in the dark, my car that you crashed. No apology, no heart, just hate, just weekends alone. Because time with your friends was better than silver and gold. And when your boys got kicked out, you gave them a key to our home. I am so sorry that I loved myself so small and attracted someone who did the same. We played a good couple, but it was always a game. Neither of us were ready for the commitment we made. Perhaps now you're a different man with your shit all together. I hope that for you, because I'm better too, but there are days when I'm at my worst and I hear a voice bullying my thoughts. I think of you and those times that we fought. I wonder why I stayed with a man who hated me that way. I couldn't have loved myself to have ever given you time back then, But I look at myself now and how far that I've come. It took me long enough, but at last we are done. I release every thought of you to fly high in the sky or bury deep in the dirt. You have no power over me. I am finally free. Part 2, that nigga. I thought I'd learned my lesson from way back before, but life always gives us chances to test our convictions. I was sure I was all right, then you pulled up to the light, let down your window, asked for my number. I knew better, but your bald head and black skin had my clit all of thunder. First date over fries, quesadilla, and wine. Sex came too soon. I made you my boo. A little time had gone by. I let you move in. You rode bikes with my son. I spoke to your mother. We were in a groove, I thought, unlike any other. But you were just like the rest, except it was not a woman that was your vice. It was what made your pupils so large when you came home at night. And then my homegirl pulled up on the man who sold you your crack. He told her to tell me that soon you'd start beating me like that because the drugs have a way of taking over your soul. And now I'm pregnant. But putting a Nigerian crackhead became my main goal. The money you took out of my purse. I had no up-close experience with drugs. This was my first. And then came the arguments every single day. From the time that they started, we never skipped one. And the day just before the abortion was so out of the box, when I had to steal back my car from you, from the snooty Fox lot. And here now, today, all the time that's gone by, I hear your fucked up accent when I wear a dress above my thigh. No way you should ever take space in my head. I don't even have a clue if you are living or dead. So I release the ghost of you, my king. Go do your thing. Live your life well, and I will live mine, knowing my things are safe with me and not in the pawn shop all of the time. Part 3, and the other one. 1. To be fair, in the chronological order of niggas, you came between this nigga and that nigga, but you have out-niggered any nigga I ever did, nigga, and thus deserve this finale. That day that I left, and you said no one would ever love me like you, that was the motherfucking goal, bitch. 2. I don't know where the fuck to begin. Maybe the way you competed with me in everything I did. Maybe the way you let me feel comfortable enough with you to share my past abuse. And then you had the nerve to say that they were all good stories, but they were not true. Maybe the way you stood in the doorway when I was vomiting during my menstrual cycle and mansplained to me that the cramps were not bad, but I had a low tolerance for pain. Maybe the way you knew I had a hard time falling asleep, but waited until my first snore to pull down my panties, to put your old and limp dick in my pussy. Maybe Maybe the way you took glory in the fact that I had nowhere to go. The maybes are infinite, but I did leave. And before I left, I told you that I was leaving because the relationship was painfully unhealthy for me. And that was putting it kindly. I spared you the repeated visions I had of me stabbing you in the chest over and over the next time you sexted me in my sleep. I left even though you told me that it was not in fact that the relationship was unhealthy for me, but I was leaving because I was a runner, because you know me better than I know myself. What's bad though is that even though I left you, you are still here, carefully counting down all the ways that I need you, making me wonder myself how I ever got along, telling me to turn left when I drive straight, telling me to wear pants when I wear a skirt, telling me to use blue when I paint red. Your voice is the most vicious in my head. 3. But getting this story of you out of me makes you small. It makes every big thing small. You fought so hard to tame me, like I was some wild horse. You fought tooth and nail to remind me of my every flaw, even the flaws that weren't flaws. Remember when I sat in the room? And then you came in there too, just to remind me for some reason that I'm a big girl. Remember the day you yelled at me saying that I am not who I think I am, but really it was you and your fear that I am who you know that I am. And that the great I am that I am lives inside of this I am. And she knows you too. 4. You're not big to me anymore. I don't need you for anything. I don't want you in any way. But you are not just inside of my head. I see you from time to time in the village, on the boulevard. And that's what you're afraid of, that I see you. And I do. 5. I don't hate you. I stopped hating you when you played your hand that day after I left, when I was safe in the comfort of my own place, and you called me and asked how I could leave you with nowhere to go, as if you were that bad. I don't hate you. Not even after that day that you called me and you had a wife already. I hung up on you, but I don't hate you. Not even that day on Facebook when you liked like 80 of my pictures. I did publicly suggest that you like your wife's pictures, but I don't hate you. Here's the thing. I don't hate you. I don't anything you. And as of now, I don't even give you space in a space you probably didn't even know you occupied. It's over. The end. And yes, I feel free. So that was Squatters. The next small collection is another collection that I wrote just in freeing myself. Yeah. So this one's called Robinhood. Robinhood. Memory. My mother doesn't remember most of my stories. I don't know. Maybe she has selective memory. Maybe some experiences are painful, and I get that, and have been blocked out to help her survive. Either way, I have dealt with the memories alone. But I was not alone when these things were happening. There were so many people around, and I've operated under the radar way too many times. In the past, when I tried to talk to my mother about past experiences, she seemed genuinely shocked by the stories as if I made them up, but I didn't make any of them up. They all happened in real life. And I'm never really healed because she doesn't remember. But there's never a conversation about how I felt about the experience. Just, I don't remember. And that's it. And what is there to talk about after that? But I'm still left with the stories living inside of me. And now I don't really bring them up with her. I get silently annoyed a bit because she doesn't remember. And maybe that's not fair. But now I take my old therapist's advice and I resolve the stories on my own. There are some stories that live rent-free in my gut. And these are some of them. In 2011, I began to have frequently bad stomach pains. At that time, I worked as a home health aide. I was working for a company called Comfort Keepers, and I had a rough client. She was rough to deal with in every way. She was hella racist, she was mean, she was heavy, and required a lot of lifting. Well, one day, my stomach hurt so badly while working for her, I had to call out of work for the next day. My supervisor told me that I could take the day off, but I had to have a note from the doctor to return to work. Of course, they only paid me $9 an hour, and I had no medical insurance, but sure, I'll go to the doctor. Well, when I went to the doctor the next day, I was flat on my back on the table as she examined me. I was concerned as her face twisted and frowned as she looked at her camera that was pointed at my stomach. When I asked her what was wrong, she said that she couldn't complete the exam because my fibroids were so big, and there were so many. They covered my entire stomach. She couldn't get one picture of my stomach through the fibroids. The stories were the fibroids. All of the stories that I had collected and had no place to go. My stomach was a library, a tombstone, a vault. I held secrets, new secrets, old secrets, my secrets, other people's secrets, but they wanted to come out. They needed to come out, and now they must come out. Throughout the years, my whole life, in fact, far back as I can remember writing, I tried seeping them slowly through the sieve of my pen, masking them with fake names and pretend places, but they were always me. These are some of those stories in no particular order except how they showed up in the line of my recollection. The night we packed my father's clothes. I don't remember how old I was or what grade I was in, but I was young. I was in elementary school. I think I was in the 4th grade. I don't remember where my sister was, though. She is 4 years younger than I, so maybe she was in bed, because I remember it was nighttime. Maybe she was at my grandparents' house around the corner. I don't remember. I don't remember my sister in most of my stories. The Venn diagram that connects my sister and me during childhood is so thin it's almost non-existent. It's like 2 separate circles. My mother was angry that night. And let me say here that I was my mother's friend. Even as a little girl, especially as a little girl, I was her friend. Maybe her closest friend. I don't know, but She treated me like friend in situations where I should have only been daughter. I didn't know why she was mad that night. After becoming an adult, I have come to know the truth, but then I didn't know. I only knew that she was mad, and she and I, with great urgency, packed my father's clothes in large trash bags and put the bags on the front porch. I knew enough to not ask questions, just keep packing. I remember being concerned that someone might steal my dad's clothes left on the porch unattended like that. I wondered how my dad was supposed to come inside as I watched her change the locks to the front door. My dad did my mom dirty. He did. And she wasn't wrong for packing his things. I just should not have been there. I was not one of her big friends. I was not her ride or die homegirl. I was not even an adult. I was a child. I should have been in bed or someplace else. Denny's. After my mom and dad would fight, and I say fight, but I mean argue. Not that an argument is not a fight. I just want to say that he never hit her. Not that that makes it better, just that that wasn't my experience. Knowing that my father hit her might be more than I could take, truthfully. But after they had an argument, my mother used to take me to Denny's. We mostly went late at night or early in the morning. Denny's is a 24-hour restaurant, and sometimes we would go at like 2 in the morning. I remember being so little that I could swing my legs and hit my heels on the seat. I sat and ate my eggs with cheese with hot chocolate. I remember my mother talking to me about grown-up things. About husband and wife things, about arguments, about things that were not my business, about things I didn't want to know, about things she should have been telling her friends. Builder's Emporium. There were good times. There were. When I look back, the best times of my childhood were when my mom was building furniture. By this time, I was in junior high school, so 7th grade. Although it could have started in 6th grade, I'm not sure, but my mom built my bed. And it was beautiful. It was the best bed I ever had. She got the idea from a book, and I remember the book. It was a thick, yellow hardback book. And often I used to flip through the pages and look at the pictures. I admired my mother. I thought it was awesome that she could look in a book, get an idea, follow the steps, and build a whole bed. And it wasn't just the bed. She also built a bookcase attached to the wall in my sister's room. I watched her measure the space, and it was amazing. We took so many trips to Builder's Emporium in Carson to get the wood and other materials. That was a place like Lowe's. I don't know if there was a Lowe's back then. But I watched her stain the wood. She cut the wood. She messed up on the measurements, so we had to go back to Builder's Emporium. She painted the wood. She nailed the wood together. And in the end, I had a bed. And a bed with drawers attached, okay? It was badass. The bookcase was also fire. I was so proud of her. Like my mother built furniture. And looking back, I am still impressed. Breadwinner. My mother worked for the courthouse in Torrance as I grew up. And my father was a construction worker. My mother paid the bills. My father had a gambling habit, a woman habit, a drinking habit, a weed habit, a hanging with his friends habit. My mother worked hard. And I don't know how she did it. I don't. She worked full time. Her husband was often unfaithful. She could never depend on his check or his presence. He was never sober. I don't remember my father ever being sober. And I loved my dad. May he rest in peace. I really did. This isn't a judgment, it's a memory. He was sloppy drunk, or he was funny drunk, or he was okay drunk. Funny drunk was my favorite, but never sober. It was my mother who made sure the mortgage was paid. It was my mother who took us to McDonald's. We ate McDonald's a lot, probably mostly, I don't know. Sometimes Burger King, Taco Bell too. They were all close together on Willow and Long Beach Boulevard in Long Beach, California. We used to call it Restaurant Row. We even laughed when we stretched out the R's. We said Restaurant Row like that. We had fun times where we could have fun times. She always made sure we ate. We always had clothes, and new clothes. It was important that we had new clothes. She grew up in a very large household. There were 10 children in her house, plus her mother and father. They used to get hand-me-down clothes from people from the neighborhood and the church often. She always hated that, so we always had new clothes. That was important to her. It bothered her so much how much I loved thrift stores. Only clothes I loved more than thrift store clothes were clothes from my Aunt Bobby. She was my mom's older sister. My mom did not like me getting bags of clothes from Bobby, but it brought me so much joy, she never said no. I never realized how hard it had to have been having to be the only parent that we could depend on, like financially or in any way. I took for granted, and I made assumptions that my mom had the money for whatever. When I was a junior in high school, I was a cheerleader. One Monday morning, I told my mom as an afterthought, as I was heading out to meet the bus, "Oh, I need $300 for my cheerleading uniform." And when she scolded me about telling her at the last minute, I still didn't get it. My only response was, "You can just write a check." Like it's nothing. Just whip out the checkbook. She did, though. She whipped out the checkbook. She wrote the check. She made it happen. When it came to money, she always made it happen. And how hard that must have been for her. It was only when I was well into adulthood that I gave my mother a pass for not picking up on how inappropriate it was that Reverend Hunter used to give me money so often. I've spoken about him in other stories, but to those who don't know, he was a perv preacher at my church who groomed me since I was a very young girl. Used to kiss me with his full tongue in my mouth. Used to make me uncomfortable with wildly not okay sexual conversations with me. I didn't tell. As a small child, he gave me candy, but as I grew older and into junior high school, he gave me money. My Reverend Hunter story secrets were probably my worst. I didn't know how to let them out. I left breadcrumbs for the adults in my life that I hoped would lead to a truth I would not have to articulate. Well, I would head out the door to catch the bus, and my mother would ask me if I had money for lunch. "Yeah, Reverend Hunter gave me some money." But silently, I yearned for, wait, why is he giving you money so often? I didn't get it. Sometimes I even got, "Praise God." Truth was, maybe it was one less thing my mom had to worry about. She had a lot on her plate, and she had to balance it alone, plus take care of a grown man who should have been lifting her load. Typing instead. In high school, in addition to your regular classes, you also got to take 2 electives. Now, I have always been an artist. Mostly a writer, but I have always also loved to paint and draw. I took 2 art classes in junior high school, but that was junior high. I can't tell you how excited I was that I would finally get to take an art class in high school. Of course, art would be my first elective. I needed my mother's signature before any classes could be approved. My other elective was Spanish. My mother wouldn't sign the card. What? Baby, let me tell you how I cried. She wouldn't let me take art because she said that I had to take typing. Typing? She told me that typing was very important because if a woman can type and do hair, then she will always have a job. was her repeated response. Okay, cool, let's take off Spanish. But that wasn't okay either. I just couldn't take art. I was so disappointed. I didn't understand why I was not allowed to take an art class. Like, art has always been my passion, but nope. Then, when the next year rolled around and it was time to pick out classes again, the same thing happened. I just knew I was going to take art this time. Bet. But again, nope. And I didn't understand it. I took typing before and successfully completed the class. I took the typing well. I'm still a very fast typist. But the next year, not only was I not allowed to take art again, but I had to take typing again. This made no sense to me. I felt that having to take typing again was me. It wasn't even like a typing 2. It was the same fucking typing class again. And this still doesn't make sense to me to this day, truthfully. I never took an art class after junior high school, and I'm a painter today. I'm also a writer, and yes, knowing how to type certainly helps. But I learned how to do that in the first class. Like, who repeats a class they have already successfully completed? Me. That's who. The only sense I made out of that is that she didn't see me beyond a secretary or a hairdresser. I don't know. I think she saw art as a waste of time. I don't know. My sister, however, never took a typing class. That's just a fact. It's not even another story. Just when I thought I had worked that story out of my system and became okay with it, my mother told me one night recently that she always loved working with wood. And I can see that, especially with the job she did on my bed and the bookcase in the house I grew up in. Then she would further with the conversation and added, and with a very sad voice, but Mama would never let me take a woodworking class. She never did. I was like, wait, what? Grambling bound. I was so ready to get out of Long Beach in high school, I didn't know what to do. In my senior year of high school, there was finally light at the end of the flood control. I was to graduate like June 17th or something like that. Then I was going to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia for summer school the next week. After my summer at Spelman, I was going to come back home, pack my clothes, and head off to Grambling State University in Louisiana. Easy. I was so happy. I was excited. I was getting out of Long Beach. I was going to be around a lot of black people. I was going to make new friends. My future looked bright. Everything was going as planned. High school graduation, check. Summer school at Spelman, check. I was super excited. I was back home packing for Grambling. 4 years away at college. I was only going to be home for like about a week. When my mother was in the living room and I was in my room, probably packing, when she called me into the room with her. She asked me to sit on the piano bench. She sat across from me on the couch and the mood was serious. I was sure she was about to give me the speech about how proud of me she was. Surely she was going to tell me how much she loved me. It made perfect sense that the vibe would be so tense. She never really told me she loved me. I mean, I knew she did. She did. It just wasn't something she said, though. We weren't mushy women. We weren't huggy and kissy. But neither was her mother toward her. But my mother loved me and was proud of me. This I knew. And this was the perfect moment to tell me. It would be uncomfortable, but I could take it. I don't think you should go to Grambling. I saw her mouth move. I heard her say the words. I was aware that there was no other person in the room she could have been talking to, but come again? I'm about to get on the plane in like 2 days. You don't think I should do what? Do what? What if something happens with your dorm situation and you can't get in, and then you're going to be stuck in Louisiana somewhere sleeping on the grass? Those were her words. I tried to assure her that nothing was going to happen with my dorm. And even if it did, Mike was already there and I would stay with him until my dorm got worked out. Mike was my first cousin and a very good friend. We grew up together. He is only a year older than I. Yeah, but he's going to be with his National Guard buddies, and he's not going to have room for you to be there. I think you should stay here and go to Long Beach City College. Now, there is no world where Long Beach City College takes the place of Grambling State University. No world. My tears did not come immediately because I thought this was something I could talk my mother down from. She was nervous. She was afraid for her oldest daughter to be leaving the nest, or whatever they say on those white movies. She just needed some reassurance that everything would be okay. I would be fine. I wasn't fine. She didn't budge, not one bit. She was firm on me not getting on that plane, but instead registering at LBCC. I was absolutely devastated. And to this day, I've never been given a reason as to why she did that. And 2 days later came, and at the time I should have been on that plane to Louisiana. Nothing special happened. No movie, no special dinner, no conversation, no, maybe you can go next year. Just silence. And another story swept under the rug. Richard. My mother met Richard when I was a senior in high school. I was at night service at church with my grandmother and sister one Sunday night when my sister sat next to me on the pew to talk to me, which was weird. We never connected socially. Maybe I shouldn't say never, but it was rare. Even that night when she sat next to me to tell me something, I was like, what do you want? Remember, she is 4 years younger. So, it also bothered me that she brought me this news. Mama met a man. His name is Richard, and he's at the house with her right now. He's going to meet us tonight when we get home. And then just like that, she was off with her friends. Why was I hearing this from an 8th grader? How did she know? How long had she known? I never got answers to those questions. I don't know which would have been worse. Knowing that a man named Richard was at my house with my mother and I would meet him after church, or if I just walked into the house after my grandmother dropped us off and he was just there. I didn't know what to do with myself after my sister told me that. There was nothing I really could do but sit there with it. I couldn't just leave church. Everything was a blur. Night service, the ride home. By the time we got to my house, I was so nervous I thought I would faint. I put my key in the door and they were sitting together at the kitchen table. I walked in and screamed, I ain't calling him nothing but Richard. And I stormed to my room. I don't remember if I came out at all. I imagine I did, though. But I ain't calling him nothing but Richard became a running joke with Richard through the years. He seemed to love telling that story when a large group was gathered, reunions, dinners, birthdays, anniversaries, whenever. But it was never funny to me, and I still don't see why it was funny to him or to anyone around who heard him. I wanted one fucking adult in my life to hold my hand and just ask, are you okay, baby? But there was no adult in my childhood who ever spoke to me that way. We do and the job market. Well, my mom and Richard got married my senior year of high school. I think I was still in high school. I think. They broke up for a while, and she told him that she didn't think I was feeling her being with him or being with another man. So dating at that time wasn't something she should do. I didn't know until I was grown that they ever even had that conversation. I didn't even notice they broke up. I was kind of in my own world. They had a wedding at the church Richard used to attend in Los Angeles. I don't remember my family being there. I imagine my grandmother and aunt were there, but honestly, I don't remember them there. My sister and I marched my mom down the aisle. And when the preacher asked, who gives this woman away, my sister and I said in unison, we do. And the whole audience gushed. And from then on, the people at his church called us, we do. Even when we were apart, I hated it, but I smiled through it, but still yuck. Richard never lived with us in the house in Long Beach. That would have been too much. Plus, my father kept lurking and putting holes in Richard's car tires. We finally moved to Reseda in the valley. I didn't like it out there. We stayed in a 2-bedroom apartment. My sister was only in Reseda with us for like a hot minute. She was physically assaulted by a boy at the local school and was outski after that. She moved back to Long Beach and stayed with my grandparents and went to high school there. I didn't like living in the valley. Richard didn't really live there with us. He still had an apartment in Buena Park in Orange County. So I was in Reseda with my mother. I graduated from high school. I registered and attended LBCC for maybe a semester or two. I don't know. Hated it. Did poorly. Because the whole Gremlin situation was never handled so badly, truthfully, and never resolved, I had a horrible taste in my mouth for school. Now that I was out in the valley, I had to get a job. But where? I didn't know anything about getting a job. I was supposed to be a Gremlin. And back then, there was no internet. Job searches consisted of knocking on doors or circling potential opportunities in the want ads. There was a restaurant chain back then called Baker's Square. I think they mostly sold like breakfast and pies. And I was excited about applying there. I had never been a waitress, but I thought the idea of getting tips every day was cool. My mother told me I couldn't work at Baker's Square. She said something about, I don't know, like being embarrassed to tell my grandmother that I was a waitress or that I was at Baker's Square. I don't remember. But really, like, I really cared what my grandmother thought about where I worked. But I kept searching. So every day searching, nothing. And now remember where I was living, San Fernando Valley, porn hub of the world. Well, one day I called a company who said they were looking for young, pretty girls to work in adult films. I figured I was young, pretty enough. I didn't know what adult films were, but I was 18, so bet. The woman on the phone could tell how green I was and wouldn't give me the address to the studio. Thank God. Seriously, thank God. Well, finally, I got a job at DAC Industries. That was a company that sold computers. I figured it would be grandmother approved because my mother worked with computers at Torrance Court, and it was in an office. I did not like working in an office, though. I didn't like having to be there at the same time every day. I didn't like sitting at the same desk every day. I didn't like going to lunch at the same time with the same people every day. Something about same and every day I just didn't like. I wasn't there long when the company folded. Now where was I going to work? One day, my mom came home from work and she told me to get in the car and we were going for a drive. And I could tell this wasn't just a leisurely drive. She had a destination in mind. And when she pulled in front of ITT Technical College, I was sure that she had to use the bathroom or something. But no. You're going to go to school here. And I fucking lost it. I cried so hard in the car that day. I think probably for the first time I cried for not being able to go to Gremlin. I cried because I felt like I had no ownership of my life. I cried because there was never anywhere I felt seen, heard, or respected. I cried so hard and long, my mother just pulled off and we went home. Well, Tim Aguilar used to be my mother's supervisor at Torrance Court. He left Torrance and was over at Compton Court. And my mother called Tim and asked if he would give me an interview because I was looking for a job. I hated working in an office, but that didn't seem to matter. I needed a job. And I could get good pay and insurance at the court, so that was my next chapter. What was there to talk about? So I had the interview all set up, and then all I had to do was pass the county test. I was smart enough to do that, and thanks to those, 2 good years in typing, I was a shoo-in. So what? I was depressed. So what? I was always unhappy. And by the time I started working for the criminal division of Compton Court, my mom and I had moved to Buena Park with Richard. He lived in a big apartment complex that was split up in two sides, with a parking lot in the middle. And both sides were named after Monopoly cards. Richard lived on the side called Park Place. The other side was called something Monopoly related. I don't remember. Park Place apartments were smaller. The other side had bigger places. So Richard moved out of his small Park Place apartment, and I moved in there alone. I mean, no one really asked me, but that was the plan. So he and my mom moved on the other side. So even though I had my own place, I was still very unhappy because I was still not living my own life. I felt like I was living the life my mother was directing. Where to work, where to live. And when I protested any of it, she would ask, then what are you going to do? And I didn't have an answer. So I lived in Buena Park in Orange County. And I worked in Compton. Very, very far away. My mother's plan was to drop me off at work and then head to her job in Torrance. It wasn't a good plan. I was new at that good county job in Compton, and being on time was important, and my mother was never on time. Never. I was late every day. My supervisor, Sharon, was a black county supervisor bitch. I already felt like shit as a human being. Then I felt like shit as a county worker. Then I didn't fit in with any of the people there. Also, since the 6th grade, I used to get the most painfully crippling menstrual cramps every month, which made working the counter and dealing with the customers impossible. Well, every month during my period, I was constantly running to the bathroom to vomit. And my mother told me not to tell them that it was because of my period, and I could never call out sick. I couldn't tell them it was my period because then they would think that it was going to happen every month. But it did happen every month. How was I supposed to hide that? But I followed my mother's orders and made up some lie about why I kept throwing up in the bathroom every month. And then finally Sharon said, I know what's wrong with you. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with that. What was I supposed to do? Just cut it out? Stop having bad cramps? I mean, I didn't know. Well, I stayed at Compton Court for a year, and then I transferred to Downey Court. Downey was the closest court to Buena Park that was still in Los Angeles County. If I went to a court in Orange County, then I would have lost my status or time or whatever my mom called it. Well, Downey Court was absolute hell, though. Margot, my white supervisor, was the most racist white bitch ever. It was awful working there. I won't say that, I had never experienced racism before, but it was bad there. I stayed there for another 3 years. And on my last day, my coworker, Claudia, came up to me and apologized to me. I didn't know what she was apologizing for because I always thought that she and I were cool. She said, before you got here, Margot had a meeting with us and told us that a girl from Compton was coming and for us all to watch you. I'm sorry for watching you. So it wasn't all in my mind. Margot was a skinny white racist bitch I should have fucked up in a break room one day. I didn't. But by the time I had transferred to Downey, I moved from Buena Park to an apartment that my uncle and aunt owned in Long Beach. It's my place, but they own it, so I'm still... Anyway, after that apartment, my Aunt Janice and I rented a place in Alhambra. So it's like a lot of family all the time. So I was done with Downey Court. I was done living around any family. I was ready to move on. I put my notice in at the court, and I applied for school. I was 22 years old, and I would have been graduating from college had I just gone straight from high school as planned. But time is always now. I did it. I went to Grambling State University. New chapter. So I went to Grambling. I had a great time. I met new people. I had wonderful experiences. I mean, it's college. There are good and bad times. There's, it was Gremlin. It was Gremlin where I changed my name. I became Jaha there. And from there, I started living my own life. There have been ups and downs, but it's been my life. And I can't ask for anything better than that. And I look back and appreciate my mother now, whose rearing was very much like mine. And she had challenges and issues of her own that were swept under the rug when she was a child. And I know that my mother gave me what was in her toolbox to give me, and I will always love her for that. I am releasing these stories that have been locked inside of me for so long to finally set Robin free so that she can do what she was always meant to do: fly. And that is Robinhood. So that's like, so I do, like, I look back in those times, and this collection is not about my mother. There are so many mother related stories because my mother was, my parent. I did have two parents growing up. My father was there, and like I said in the story, I loved my father tremendously. I loved him tremendously, period. And my mother was the one who I could depend on. If I needed money, I'm gonna go to my mother. If I needed, a ride, I'm going to my mother. I knew that I could depend on my mother to be home, at night, every night. I knew that, and there isn't another working artist in my family. And looking back, I think my mother is about, I guess 22 years older than I am. And she gave me, like I said in the story, she gave me what was in her toolbox. So she pulled what worked for her to work for me. It just didn't, So, she worked for the court, and she was, she made enough money to pay the mortgage and take care of our needs. She had great insurance, and so did my sister and me. And it was a life that she felt would work for me. It did not. She didn't have it in her toolbox or thought process to go, how do you live as an artist? My daughter likes to draw. How do you live as a painter? What kind of insurance? She was like, do they have medical insurance? Okay. You can be a painter, but can you go to the dentist? Okay. And I, like, looking back, I respect that. I don't know. I have great respect for it. I don't know the mother I would have been at 22 years old, with a husband that was not my partner. I mean, partner in the way you need your husband to be your partner. I don't know. And I, looking back, it was important to her. I think that kind of mother, father, and children stay together and we be family. And she did 100% of what she could to keep that, her reality or our reality. And that didn't work. And it's okay. Like, if I, not if I can, my mother is alive and I can say, I know that you did what you, could do. And I look in the camera and say, I love you and I appreciate you. Yeah. There were, and I know that I was her friend. And even with like the Gremlin situation, we don't talk about it, but I believe that it was, uh, it, it, it just would have like broke her to see me leave. I was her friend. Um, so, but those are the stories. So, right. A friend, my Joy, has a workshop in Long Beach, California called Write Yourself Free. And that was me writing myself free. Those two collections, Squatters and Robin Hood. And I was able to like really release a lot in writing those collections. I hope that you are releasing your stories, writing yourselves free. Take care, friends. Today is day 40. Join me again tomorrow for day 41. Love yourselves. Mean it.